What's going on? Boys, thanks to our patrons and Fiverr customers, subscribe to our Patreon free for behind the scenes stuff. Arm yourselves, typology stuff. This should be a brief one. As I pay more attention to fashion, not just what people are wearing, but also the reasoning behind it, I've noticed a pattern. Or rather, a few patterns, because this applies to other TE types, but each type seems to handle it differently. And I don't have patterns for all those TE types, but we'll go through the ones I've seen. Beginning most prominently with ENTJs. Now, a long time ago, I made a video about INFPs, and I discussed their fashion sense. Big mistake talking about particulars. When you're making typology videos, if you choose to make typology videos, don't look at the thing, look at the thing behind the thing, because that'll be more accurate and stay more correct. And I first noticed this in INFPs, their tendency to understand what they need to wear and when, and then wear it. Looking back, TE types in general put thought into the clothes they wear, not just for their personal satisfaction, but also for fitting in with the world. And that's why ESTJ fashion sense has never spoken to me, but they are dressing even more intentionally than INFPs are. But we'll get to that. We're calling this video ENTJ fashion sense because people don't give a fuck about the functions for the most part. ENTJs understand how to dress very well for a situation. So where an INFP knows what to wear and they'll wear it, they'll make it look good, they'll make it work, they'll make it acceptable for the situation. An ENTJ will both go all out and know how to go all out. And this doesn't mean silk suits at all times. I'm beginning to look at TE as, or one way of looking at TE is fitting socially, because TE is a social function, the puzzle pieces together. And when an ENTJ wants to fit pieces together, they don't just fit them together, they fit them together as perfectly as they can. I'm going to use black culture, black dude ENTJs as an example here. Because of all the subtypes, they do something I find fascinating. They know how to dress in ways that will both satisfy their in-group's expectations, even upstage them, while also managing to have other culture overlap. They understand social dynamics, once again, not in that radiation FE way, but in that mechanical way, how to maximize via clothes the effect they want. And I use black culture, black dude ENTJs here, because that should be difficult to pull off, but TE and I think NI makes them able to do that, speaking to that function combination. Because it's not just fashion sense, it's in fashion is another form of social sense, distinguished from ESTJ fashion, which we'll get into. ENTJs are calculating with their appearances, and they're good at it. We talked a while, or no, not a while ago, that was relatively recent, about the imposition of your outfit, the ability for you using your clothes to impose a mood or an attitude on other people. One, without needing to say anything. Two, without it necessarily seeming like you're doing anything, even though you are. It speaks not only to TE's social sense, but again to that function combination. I think that ability to get into overlap, the awareness that you can have overlap, and the desire to do it for maximum effect, comes from that combination of TE and NI. And you see something similar in INTJs, but what's interesting about them is there's a flavor of what ENTJs are doing in INTJs' efforts when they're dressing, but they actually have a lot of ENFP flavor in there. Because how do ENFPs dress? In casual settings, usually iconography or informal culture uniforms, they seem to like wearing who they are. And even in situations in which that level of individuality is not allowed, they'll find ways to do it anyway. ENFP formal dressing is fascinating. They'll always find a way to fit their identity in, even if they have to work to make it acceptable or subtle. And once again, not always, not all the time, a pattern I've noticed. That's also a way to get ENFPs to notice you and speak with you, by the way. Slipping your individuality into your outfit, too. It seems like they're always sniffing for that, and when they find it, they will talk to you. ENFPs are a good learning typology type. And the reason we discuss them is to explain what I've observed about INTJ's outfits. INTJ fashion is strange. It's chimeric. Because unlike ENTJs, INTJs seem, before they put their clothes on, they make a decision about what they're going for today. Oh, yeah, that's the other thing about ENTJs that we accidentally skipped over. ENTJs, it seems like their goal is maximum effectiveness at all times. That's why, even when ENTJs are dressing casually, you'll be able to smell heightened intentionality on them. If they're going to be dealing with the world, there will be additional effort you can pick up on. Now, back to INTJ's decision. Today, am I going for maximum impact? Am I going for identity in that ENFP vein? Or am I going for conformity uniform, which is ESTJ fashion, but again, we will get to them. So with INTJs, there's not an easily detectable standard. As with much about them, it's going to depend on their mood. In other words, they have an array of things they can do, but what they will do will rarely come down to what they should do. It'll come down to how they're feeling, which is an interesting thing about them. As in, I've seen INTJs do inappropriate or unexpected fashion shit because for whatever reason they are feeling it that day. Now, jumping over to the ESTJs, because in relation to this TE fashion thing, they tripped me up for a while. Because ESTJs, if you're just looking at them and not thinking too hard, they seem to dress the way you would imagine a normal person would dress. Or another way to look at it is the way you would expect someone from their background to dress. And in that, there doesn't seem to be a pattern, but then I realized that is the pattern. Why is there such a variety between individuals in ESTJ dress and fashion sense? Because there are all sorts of different standards of acceptability and different norms, and ESTJs, probably thanks to SI, are not dressing toward any one particular thing, like wanting to express their individuality at all times or wanting maximum effect at all times. They're concerned mostly with acceptability within their cultural standard. That's why, despite an ESTJ's variety, in a singular ESTJ's dress or in a variety of ESTJ's dress, you won't see them go outside the norm almost ever, for any reason. And this isn't to say ESTJ's dress is boring, or that they don't care about fashion. Many ESTJs do, but they seem most concerned with appealing to their in-group. And let's compare that back to ENTJs. An ENTJ wants to win within their in-group, but they also want to squeeze as much efficiency and effect out of their outfit as possible. Ergo, if they've managed to win the in group appearance, they're willing to go outside that in group to try to get a bit more. Where an ESTJ won't do that. And in fact, if their in group is not focused on dressing super well at all times, it's very common to see an ESTJ wearing straight up casual clothes, if that's accepted and normal in their in group. Between ENTJs and ESTJs, both types are focused on TE, but the sensibility of the way that function gets used is completely different. An ESTJ is concerned with staying within the boundaries, knowing what to do and when, and maybe doing it a little better here and there. I think that's why you see these dude uniforms, unofficial uniforms across cultures. Statistically speaking, although there is a good variety of types in men as compared to with women, which SFJs are way disproportionately represented, STJs in men are still overrepresented, but it's not all of them. Nonetheless, their numbers, their percentages, I think that's why you see in boomers or in Gen X's dudes walking around all across the country with the sunglasses, ball cap, t-shirt, shorts, and sneakers thing. Particularly in white dudes over 50. It's the uniform. It's a joke to people outside that in-group, but within that in-group, that is what is acceptable. That's what's expected. That's why it's everywhere. Fashion or effect aren't necessarily the concerns. The concern is using fashion to create the desired effect within one's in-group. It doesn't appear to be intentional, but when you look at the average, you see the pattern. And also, if you're around ESTJs, you look at the things they don't do. And I think you see that even more if you're not an ESTJ, but you're supposed to be in the in-group. I've noticed ESTJs, when they're mobbed up, are very critical of people who don't align with the dress code, the informal dress code. Even if they're being friendly about it or you're friends with an ESTJ, they're aware, and they'll make you aware, that you are presenting yourself outside what they believe to be presentable. Versus if you spend time with ENTJs, they'll also comment on your presentation, but their recommendations are not fall in line. Their recommendations are geared toward maximizing effect. And I'm wondering if that's where the STJ-NTJ conflict comes from. They're an interesting contrast. I haven't been able to witness this as much as I'd like, but it seems like when NTJs and STJs are having opinions about one another's outfits, it's tricky. They both seem to be aware of what the other is doing and why. So it's like magnets that draw in close, but then never touch, and therefore there's like a weird animosity appreciation thing going on there. And again, I think that has everything to do with the functions, the auxiliary functions TE is paired with. But we'll need to think about why that is, because that's not a universal thing across all types, I mean. Because ENFPs will go outside the norm, but maybe that does still, TE and SI, there is still a concern with the norm there, but their reaction to it is to go outside it. The focus is still on the same thing as what ESTJs are focused on, which is the in-group norm, but they react to it differently, but the focus is the same. We'll need to think about that. Like if you enjoyed, subscribe if you haven't.